Welcome to The Explainer. You know, in a world where different faiths are literally next-door neighbors, you have to wonder, how do they all get along? Today we're going to unpack one author's pretty provocative answer, an argument that really challenges the whole idea of just blending beliefs together.
So the text kicks off with a question that, honestly, many of us see playing out every single day. With so many different faiths now living side by side, the author asks, how are they supposed to coexist? And this isn't some abstract theoretical thing, it's the reality of our super-connected world.
All right, here's our game plan for breaking this down. We're just going to follow the author's argument step by step. We'll start with the problem of a multi-faith world, check out the possible solutions, and then dive deep into a defense of what the author calls uniqueness.
First, the author really sets the stage for us. They start with a personal memory, looking back at a time when Britain was basically seen as a Christian nation. The main religious choice was pretty simple, church or no church. But they argue that this has been totally transformed into a multi-faith society, and that creates a whole new problem that needs a new answer.
So, given this new reality, the author suggests that there are really only 4 ways that different religions can relate to one another. And here are those 4 paths. First up, hostility. We're talking outright religious war, and history is just filled with examples of that. Then there's separatism, which leads to communities walling themselves off in ghettos. The third option is pluralism, the idea that all religions are equally valid. And finally, number 4, is syncretism, the attempt to basically merge all faiths into one.
Now, according to the author, it's this fourth one, syncretism, that's really gaining the most traction today. They describe it as this powerful social pressure to focus on shared values instead of distinct beliefs, all for the sake of peace. It's a path the author predicts is heading straight toward a single blended world religion.
And it's right here, against this backdrop of merging faiths, that the author makes a really sharp turn. They propose that for Christians, there's only one possible defense against this whole trend.
And this right here is the absolute core of the entire argument. The author contends that the only way to resist this pressure to blend in is to be completely, unshakably certain of the one thing that, in their view, cannot be blended: the uniqueness of Jesus Christ.
So what does the author actually mean by uniqueness? Well, this quote illustrates it perfectly. It's not just about being special or different. The claim is that Jesus is in a category all by himself. So different, in fact, that he can't be compared with anyone else. He can only be contrasted with them.
So, to build this case for absolute uniqueness, the author then zooms in on some really specific moments from the Gospels that are presented as having no parallel anywhere in history. This timeline basically lays out the author's evidence. The argument is that from his very conception all the way to his resurrection, every single stage of Jesus' life involved claims and events that, according to this text, fundamentally separate him from any other figure in history.
The author draws a really critical line here. They argue that Jesus' miracles and moral teachings, while totally remarkable, weren't what got him killed. Nope. It was his central message, his repeated, unambiguous claim to be God. That was seen as the ultimate crime, blasphemy, and it was punishable by death.
And this leads to what the author presents as a choice you just can't get away from. If Jesus really claimed to be God, you can't just brush him off as a good teacher. Within this framework, you're left with only 3 options. He was a lunatic, deceiving himself; he was a liar, deceiving others; or, well, he was telling the truth and was in fact the Lord.
So, how does the author resolve that trilemma? They argue that one singular event is meant to serve as the ultimate proof, the thing that vindicates the Lord option entirely. But first, the author makes a really crucial distinction that we have to understand. They separate resuscitation, like Lazarus coming back to the same life in the same body only to die again later, from resurrection. In this argument, resurrection isn't just coming back to life, it's a total recreation into a new kind of body that can never die again. To support this claim of a unique resurrection, the author presents several pieces of evidence from the Gospels. They point to the physical scene, the grave clothes just collapsed and left behind, as well as the supernatural qualities of the new body. But the final point they really stress is permanence, that this new body was taken from the world, leaving an empty tomb, unlike that of any other religious founder.
So after this whole deep dive argument for uniqueness, where does the author leave us? Well, it's with something that seems at first like a complete paradox. And here it is. On one hand, the author argues this uniqueness makes the Christian faith exclusive. It's a singular truth that you just can't mix with other beliefs. But on the other hand, they argue that the very same exclusivity creates an inclusive mission. The logic is, if it's the only way, then it must be for everyone, which means there's a duty to share it.
And so, the author's argument leaves us with this really challenging final question. In a global culture that values harmony and pluralism more and more, what is the place and the function of a belief system that asserts its own unique and exclusive truth? That's the central tension this text asks all of us to consider.